You guys are awesome. So we're going to do something a little bit different tonight. We are actually going to do the first of 3 different panel nights. What we decided to do this year, we've kind of done it in the past, so it's going to be a little bit different, is give you guys an opportunity to ask questions to the leaders. A lot of times we just throw all this information out at you. We hit on some really awesome topics, but then we don't necessarily have time to really discuss that and make sure that we're all on the same page. And I know questions come up. I know for me in my faith walk, the more I try and have a relationship with God, a lot of times I end up with more questions than answers. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to do a little bit of a review of the series that we've already done. And for those of you guys that haven't been here or are new tonight or whatever, over on the Welcome Center every night for Fuse, we have these little cards where you can ask questions that pertain to the series. So if something comes up and you're like, hey, I don't understand that, or maybe it's a follow-up question, you can write your question down. You can throw it in the little jar, and we've held on to those, and we're going to discuss the answers to those tonight. Another thing that we are going to allow you guys to do is text us questions live as we go through the night. So this is that week where if you have a cell phone, you can have it out in front of you the entire time. By doing it that way, that keeps it anonymous, so you guys can ask questions without having to worry about feeling embarrassed or whatever else. Unless your friends are like looking over your shoulder, what question is that person asking? But anyways, it should be really cool. Before we get into that though, you guys are going to break off into your teams for a couple minutes just to tell everybody how much you love them and do some housekeeping stuff and all that. So we're going to make it quick, so you got like 5 minutes with your teams. Go ahead and find them, and then we'll be right back here. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to get into our panel discussion. Why don't we have our lovely panelists introduce themselves, even though you know all of these fine people, and why don't you tell us, let's think, what's something good you should tell us?
Who's going to win the title game? Well, Alabama, of course. We all know that.
What? Your favorite animal to eat? I like that question. Favorite animal to eat and who you are.
Oh, it's not turkey. I'm Jen, and my favorite animal to eat is catfish. Well, it is. I'm from the South. What do you want? That's all we eat.
No,
there.
Catfish is good. She scared me when she said catfish.
Cat. I like cat too, but we don't talk about that here at Fuse. It's cheaper than beef.
Scary thing is she owns cats, so I
had 5, now there's only 3.
Wonder what happened to the other 2. I'm Alyssa, and my favorite animal to eat is a cow, so beef.
Yes.
I'm Joe, and I guess my favorite animal, I love seafood. Any type of like lobster, crab, stuff from like straight from the ocean into my belly is where it goes. Boo. Wow. Sushi is good. I totally count sushi. Yeah.
Crustaceans.
Yeah.
You like the crustaceans.
It really is good. It is good.
I'm GT, and my favorite meats
animal to eat.
Animal to eat is pheasant.
Oh.
Pheasant. All right.
Chris likes it.
All right. So these are our fine panelists. Does anybody remember what the first series is that we did this year? First series. No. Jason's throwing 1,000 points out there to who can remember it.
Jen dressed up.
What the title of the first series? We talked about it for 3 weeks, and it was only like 2 months ago. Influence. Yes, Influence. Who said that? Neil. 1,000 points to Neil's team.
Nice job on that phone. Nice.
All right, so the first series that we did...
Yeah, Brenda, we just lost our lead. We talked about this.
Uh-oh.
Come on.
All right. So the first series we did was Influence, and it was broken up into 3 different weeks. The first week we talked about allowing other people to influence you. I believe that was when Jen had like her awesome leather jacket and combat boots on and all that kind of stuff.
I was so cool.
I think both positively and negatively how other people influence you. The second week in the series, we talked about allowing God to influence you. And then the third week, we talked about our responsibility or how we influence other people. So we did get a couple questions about this series. Before we get into those, this is the phone number. What we don't want you guys to do is we don't want this just to turn into like a totally random tangent at the end. So we're going to go through the series that we talked about this year, answer those questions. So if you have a question that relates to influence, you can go ahead and text it in now. But at the end, the kind of fourth category we're going to talk about is miscellaneous. So if you just have something that's not really related to stuff we've talked about at Fuse, but just a question that you really want answered, then you can wait until the fourth section. All right? So with influence, we did get a couple of those cards that were turned in ahead of time. Again, if you have questions at any point in time, go ahead and start texting them in. There was 3 questions that we had, but we kind of lumped them all together because I think the answer is going to be the same for all of them. So it was, what should I do about the people that don't like me? Should I just ignore them or stand up to them? Why do I get picked on? And what should I do about this group of girls that teams up and teases me?
Okay, I'll start. I think this one kind of relates directly to the Bible verse that we used, and I think we used it more than once throughout this series. It was 1 Peter 2:9, when we talked about this concept of being a royal priesthood, a treasured possession, a chosen people. I know that it's always hard when people tease us or don't accept us, and believe me, I think, like I shared with all of you last week, when I was your age, I was extremely driven by social status. You know, it was really important to me to be invited to all the best parties and to be on the cheerleading team and all that kind of stuff. It really meant a lot to me, a lot more than it should have. So I understand what it's like, and it was something that I didn't get when I was your age, and that I certainly understand now, is this concept that we're all created in the image and likeness of God, and that can never be a bad thing. You know, that just can't be a bad thing. We're created, we're different and unique, and so we're not all meant to fit into the same group, and we're not all meant to be the same. Sometimes people tear each other down because it makes them feel better about who they are. So at the core of who you are, I think it's important that you understand your own intrinsic self-worth and who God created you to be, and that's this treasured possession, this chosen people that each of you are. Now, I know that that's easy for me sitting up here on the stage at 42 years old to say to you, because I'm an adult, and I guess I wouldn't say that I don't live that need to fit in anymore, because you still do feel that way as an adult, but at the end of the day, if you can at least remember that it's not about social status, it's about who you've been created to be, and who God created you to be, and that's where your self-worth really comes from. No one is going to fill that hole for you if you can't look in the mirror and truly believe that for yourself. So I think that's first the most important thing to remember when this teasing and this bullying starts to creep into your lives, is remember who you are and who you were created to be.
Some words of comfort from the Bible that come to my mind is when Jesus said, in this world you will have hardship, you will have trouble, you'll have, problems, but I've overcome the world. And that to me is like, it really helps me see a big picture of things, especially when it comes to, in this world you will have fights, you will not get along with everyone. That's just what sin is and has done and is doing in the world, is creating this conflict. And I don't want to, say this by belittling, any social problems or anything, but, that is what the world is. That's what a lot of teenagers' world is right now, is just all of these problems. People don't like you, you don't like people, but again, like what Jen was saying, we're meant for so much more. We are, a holy people, a royal priesthood, and in the big grand scheme of things, we have Christ, and that's what, we've overcome the world through that, and like she said, there are people that do try to bring down others because they have their own deep-seated issues, and that's always hard to remember, but, remember that they're dealing with stuff too.
I was teased when I was a kid, and one thing I'm going to tell you guys to look at is how you respond to how people are teasing you, or how you respond when they're teasing you. I used to get really upset, and that just always seemed to kind of make it worse. I've found that if you kind of ignore it, they get bored, and they may still, they're trying to get a rise out of you, is what they're trying to do. They're trying to make you upset. So if you just stay calm and walk away or ignore it, they will eventually stop.
Unless you're Seamus, he never stops.
Right.
Unless you're Seamus.
I was just going to say, yeah. Sometimes I push Michelle's buttons just to see what happens if I keep poking. That's right.
How does that end up?
It usually ends badly, yeah.
Ends up with you on the couch?
What should I say? What should I say if one of my best friends hurt my feelings? I don't want to make them feel bad, but I don't want to pretend it never happened. What should I say if one of my best friends hurt my feelings? I don't want to make them feel bad. So I'm guessing like you don't want to confront them because you're afraid then they'll feel bad, but do you just pretend it never happened?
I guess the biggest thing in this question is what did they say? How bad did they hurt you? If it was just irritating, probably just best to let it go, right? Now, if they really hurt you badly, the best way to approach that would be to and the approach is don't just go up and straight up accuse them of how they made you feel or hurt them back.
I understand not wanting to make them feel bad, and like GT said, if it's a one-time thing, you can just let it go. But if it really did hurt you, I would confront them in a loving and nice way. But if they're your best friend, they probably didn't mean to hurt you. If they really are your best friend, they probably were just kidding. So, but they're not going to want to do it again if you're good friends. So let them know that it bothered you.
This is something that I know it's funny, but I actually am teaching preschool now too, which is ridiculous. I'm not sure how that happens, but this is conflict resolution is something that I start working with kids even when they're 4. And again, the kids will come up to me and they'll say, "Oh, Miss Jen, so-and-so said they're not my friend and hurt my feelings." And I'll even have the conversation then, do you want to talk to that friend? And bring them over and say, now talk to so-and-so and tell them how this made you feel, okay? And then the little 4-year-old will say, you said that I wasn't invited to your birthday party and that hurt my feelings and I feel bad. And so sometimes it's important to learn how to talk about our feelings with other people when we're truly hurt. And I think that's important too, because sometimes we sweep hurt under the rug and we pretend it didn't exist, and then it builds up and builds up and builds up. And I think sometimes we've never learned how to comfortably talk about how we feel with other people in a way that isn't confrontational. So we do exactly what the preschoolers do. We go behind the back and say, so-and-so hurt my feelings and I'm really upset. And we don't go to the source and say, hey. And a lot of times just talking those things out, again, you're probably going to find, like Alyssa said, maybe they're like, oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't even know that hurt your feelings. But I think communication in any relationship is critical, which again is why even at 4 years old, I'm constantly bringing them to the table together so they can talk to each other about how they feel, because it's important to be able to communicate those things. But I also agree, it's really important to know when, pick your battles too, and be like, does this one really matter at the end of the day? If sometimes you just forget it, let it go.
All right. All right, we got this. This is our first text-in question. I know. See, what you guys don't know is that all of these other questions that have come in, they've had like 3 months to study and prepare their answers.
Not really this smart.
That's right. But now you have to think on your toes. Not with your toes. How can I influence others positively if I don't have a real opportunity?
Oh, first and foremost, I think it has to do with, you would be amazed at how many people are influenced just by the things that you do or don't do. We always talk about how actions speak louder than words. I'm a huge believer in letting your actions speak for themselves. I think I've run into a lot of students and a lot of adults who've influenced me in very positive ways who've never actually said anything to me. They've done things that have impressed me just in the way. And I'm going to tell you a very short story about when I was on a mission trip. When I was in Joplin a couple of months ago, the leader of a ministry out there called Transform Joplin, his name is Trent, and he runs the Habitat rebuilds out there. And he's very efficient and he works very well with people, but there was one thing that stuck out, and it was something that he did that showed me what kind of person he was. We were working in a group, we were putting up walls and building houses, and he had a lot of adults there, and there was all this action going on, and I noticed a little boy 2 houses down trying to throw a big box into a dumpster, and he couldn't reach, and he kept trying to. So Trent just quietly kind of walks over there, stops what he's doing, just kind of walks over there, doesn't draw attention to himself, and just walks over and helps the little guy put the box up in the dumpster, and turns around and comes back and continues what he's doing. Now those actions spoke volumes to me about a servant's heart and the kind of man that Trent was, without saying a single word. And I pointed it out when I was leading a Bible study with our team later that day. I said, I saw a true servant character in this one action, and that influenced me more than anything he could have ever said to me. So never underestimate what you do, because people do see it.
All right. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off. We're going to try and keep this going. I know you guys got awesome answers. We got tons of questions coming in. Some of the questions pertain more to the other series, so if you're like, I was the first person to send in a question and they skipped me, we didn't skip you, we'll get to that. The next question, this is another text-in one. Some secular things, video games like Call of Duty, I'm guessing like movies, a lot of that kind of stuff, are given a bad rap because they're violent and a bad influence. If we understand that what we're seeing is wrong and is a bad influence, can we enjoy these things while avoiding their negative influence?
Mr. Pop.
I don't know.
I think you can. I mean, like you said, you understand that. If you understand that what is happening is wrong and you're not going to go out and do that, like kill a bunch of people, I think you can enjoy it. You just need to take it for what it is and know that it's pretend and how do I explain this? Yeah, know that it doesn't actually exist, and GT help.
I'm gonna throw a follow-up question in there too. How does that affect how you influence other people when they know you're into that stuff too?
Well, just for the first part of the question, even though you are aware of it, a lot of times it can still affect you. It can desensitize you to those kind of actions. When I was your guys' age, I actually liked a lot of rap.
What?
I know, it's hard to believe, but the thing about it was I didn't realize until I stopped listening to the harder rap that how angry I was getting because of it. So you sometimes you watch and you listen to these things and you don't even realize until after the fact what it's doing to you.
I would also caution a little bit, and I use the verse, and I use a verse by Paul that says, everything is permissible, or everything is accessible to me, but everything is not necessarily permissible to me. And I'm paraphrasing, but Paul does caution us about this as Christians as well. He does say that. I mean, we can do anything we want. We can watch anything we want. We can expose ourselves to anything we want. And I am not going to sit up here and say that, just because you play a violent video game, you're going to be a violent person. There are some TV series that are extremely inappropriate that I find hilarious. But, you also want to be mindful of your influences and be cautious about how much of this you let seep into your lives, because it does affect you. So I try also to keep going back to that verse. Everything is accessible, but not necessarily permissible. I've got to draw the line somewhere. So I would just caution against, how much you expose yourself to it. But no, I wouldn't say you're a bad person just because you like to play Black Ops or watch Family Guy. I don't believe that.
All right, well, we're going to move on to the next series just because we have a bunch to get through, but there were some questions we skipped over. Again, a lot of these, if we missed your stuff, talk to the other leaders. If you guys are in small groups, these are awesome, conversation starters. The next series that we went into that we talked about was Worth. And again, it was 3 weeks. We talked about how you guys are all someone worth creating, someone worth knowing, and someone worth dying for. couple questions that go along with that. First one says, I'm having a problem with my boyfriend's parents. He treats me like a princess, but his parents treat me like crap. What should I do?
I'd like to start off by saying I'm very nice to Olivia, so I know she didn't write this. Just kidding.
She's actually horrible to Olivia.
Apparently, Audrey wants to answer this question, so...
Advice.
I actually can relate well to this one. My wife's parents actually don't like me a lot. I'm a bad person, just so you know, I'm a bad person. Anyways.
He listens to rap and...
The thing they does give you an opportunity for, though, is a lot of introspection and listen to what they're saying. Not necessarily take it in and let it weigh you down, but listen to it and see if there's things you can actually take from it. See if there's pieces of it that can make you even better of a person.
You have to look at it from the parent's perspective as too. I mean, if you're taking up all this person's time, like he's always spending all of his time with you and isn't really spending a lot of time with his family, their parents are going to feel kind of jealous, and you need to, you need to balance it, but definitely look at it from their perspective. Don't just assume that they're terrible people and they're being totally unfair. They probably have some very valid reasons for feeling the way they do.
I think another huge part along with that, and looking at it from their perspective is, of course, we already talked a little bit about when people have offended you. If they have, for whatever reason, indirectly maybe have upset you or offended you, to let that go or forgive and just clean the slate, mentally, emotionally, spiritually with them, which is extremely difficult to do. But it's all you can do if you want to move forward and just try to, look at them in a new way and in a new light. That forgiveness is huge at first.
All right. A text-in question. It's, I've made mistakes and I know they were sins, but I don't regret them. Am I wrong?
This is something I know a lot about, as a lot of you I've shared in the past, and let's be honest. I mean, I'm going to put it out there. Sometimes we get into a sinful lifestyle. We do things, and we're like, no, I like doing that. I mean, let's be honest. Some sins are enjoyable, and so
gluttony.
Right, exactly, right. So this is tough because the appeal of some of these things is pretty heavy. It draws us in, and so it's really, really hard. And I think it's important to also be able to make the distinction between slipping up, having a sin issue, and making a conscious decision to live in that lifestyle. We've all made mistakes. We've all gone down that road. Believe me, I understand that. But do we get stuck there? Do we let that sin issue, whatever it might be, get the better of us so that we stay there? Or can you realize that God has called you for something more? God has called you for something better. Temptation is not a sin, so also keep that in mind. We're tempted to do a lot of things we shouldn't do. We're tempted every single day, and we're going to continue to be tempted. That's not a sin. So always be able to keep that idea in your mind. There's a difference between sin and temptation, and there's a difference between a sin issue and choosing to live in that particular lifestyle. And those are the decisions that you have to make. But no one said it would be easy either. It isn't. So there are choices you're going to have to make.
Is suicide unforgivable? Don't worry, not considering it, just wondering.
Thank you for that comfort.
The only unforgivable sin that I can think of is denying God and turning your back on God in a permanent state. I've had friends and students that have committed suicide. It's a really rough thing to deal with, but I don't believe that it is an unforgivable sin. I believe that it's Like I said, the only truly unforgivable sin is permanently turning your back on God.
Yeah, this is something that my pastor and I talked about at length a couple of years ago. I don't know if you guys remember, but there were a couple of tragic events with students and people that I'd known, 2 suicides and a drug overdose. And I had a really hard year that year. And it was a question I wrestled with a lot. And I remember talking to my pastor about it. And he said the same thing. He said, we're not God. And we can't judge. Now, I remember growing up as a child in the Catholic Church being told that absolutely suicide was an unforgivable sin. But again, you have to remember, we're not God and we can't judge. And so that was what my pastor reminded me of. And he said, and what you need to remember is having empathy for the unbelievable amount of pain and hurt and anguish that this person must have been going through to be driven to the point where they think that there is no way out and it will never get any better, and that there is no hope. So he said, you have to really be able to look at it from that perspective, and always remember that we're not judge, and so we don't know. So I don't think there's any easy answers for this. So we just have to remember we're not God, so we can't put that answer out there and say that.
What happens if your friends reject you? What do you do?
Find some new ones.
Get new friends.
Get new friends.
I know that seems flippant, but give them more, Alyssa. Go ahead, talk more.
Get lots of new friends.
We didn't mean to sound like we were like, you're overreacting.
It doesn't really matter. I think you need to look at why your friends rejected you. Sometimes there's a difference between rejecting someone and growing apart. If there are people that you were friends with for years and suddenly you're not, you see if your interests have changed. If it's not necessarily rejection, it's just you've grown apart, you don't have the same interests anymore. If they have literally rejected you, just try to find the reason why. And maybe it's not necessarily that you did anything wrong, but confront them about it, asking, why are you blowing me off? Why have you rejected me like this? And see if you can either reconcile, or if you can't, try to become a better person or a bigger person and work on yourself, and then get new friends.
Yeah, what Alyssa said. Also, the idea of teen years are the time that people try out different identities and what cliques or groups or people or things that they try to associate with. People try on different kinds of hats, and so it just might be simply nothing personal. I want to try this group, these people, this lifestyle, whatever, and they might come right back like next year, next semester. It might be completely like nothing happened, and that definitely happened in my group of friends in middle school and high school. People went away and then they came back like nothing ever happened, and you just kind of go along with it. It's just a weird roller coaster ride, and you look over to see if they're next year or not, and somehow they come back. But again, like what Alyssa said, it depends on why they're leaving. Is it because of something personal with you, or just simply because that's the way their coaster was going? So, and you can only figure that out by talking to them.
I guess this one's probably going to go back to GT since he answered it before, but kind of a follow-up to the suicide one. It says, isn't suicide turning your back on God? You're giving up your hope that God can save you from your trials on earth. That's blaspheming God's power. Would that make suicide unforgivable?
Since you pointed out already, thank you, Neil, for this. I appreciate it so much.
Did sound like a Neil.
Somebody is no longer anonymous in the room, I guess. I think this is a breach of confidentiality.
Let's let GT answer.
I
think that's the best answer. I don't have anything right now.
What'd you say? I think that this question still places us in the seat of judge and jury. So it's just really hard to say. I mean, one could make the argument that committing suicide is turning your back on God, I suppose. But again, if you're not in that place and you're not living that pain, you don't really know where that person's coming from. So again, I think this is just a tough question because it puts us in the seat of judge and jury, which we cannot be. We can never do. I think as Christians, we're just called to love everybody and do the best we can to reach out to those who are so hurting and so broken that they've reached that point. And all we can do is try and spread love and spread hope and be love and hope to those people at the times when they're hurting most. That's what we're called as Christians to do, is to love. And we can't be judge and jury, we can just love. So that's the best way I can answer both of those questions.
On another note,
Well done.
On another note, people, depending on their, they're emotionally upset and mentally upset people in the world, they might logically look at suicide as a way that God is saving them. They get to go be with God, and they get to go be with Jesus, and they get, this is God's way of ending their pain.
And actually, my pastor did bring that up in our
conversation. It depends on what's in their
well.
heart and how God receives it.
Right.
All right. And then the most recent series that we went through was The Not Good Enoughs. We talked about Rahab, Paul, Gideon. Actually, no, I think we changed one of those, didn't we?
No,
that was right. That was right. Okay. So that was the most recent one. A couple questions that came out of that. Whenever I do something wrong, my parents tell me God doesn't love me anymore. What do I do?
We still love you, by the way.
Get new parents?
Get new parents?
No, I can't do that.
Can you repeat that again?
Whenever I do something wrong, my parents tell me that God doesn't love me anymore. What do I do?
Go ahead.
I don't know. Wow. There are a lot of times when we do something wrong and someone corrects us on it that we feel like their feelings are reflecting on us personally, and that's not always true. They're not saying necessarily that you're a bad person because you've done this, but we talked about this in my class this morning. Your parents want what is best for you. And just because they're correcting you doesn't mean they're saying that you're a bad person. They're trying to keep you from a possibly bad or harmful situation. So unless they're actually going, God doesn't love you anymore because you didn't clean your room, step back, clean your room, and look at it. If they're actually saying that, we'd like to talk to them, by the way.
I say they're wrong. If they're saying that God doesn't love you, first of all, they don't know God any better than God knows God, and God said that He loves us no matter what. So that's a completely just a wrong statement. We can't fall away from God far enough. We talked about that with all these characters. That there's no point of too far beyond where God doesn't love you anymore. We found that in all those characters, and we find that in all of you. So,
I mean, look at Rahab. She was a prostitute, wasn't she? And that's a pretty far fall from God. Yet she was still saved.
Paul was killing
Christians. I mean, that's pretty far, and God still loves them. So just because you don't clean your room doesn't mean God's going to stop loving you.
All right. I feel like I never fit in, even at Fuse. It makes me really upset, and I really don't want to come anymore. What do I do?
We love you. We really do. Hug Audrey.
It's really hard to find the right group of people to fit in with at times, no matter where you're at, whether you're at school or here or anywhere else. So I think it's hard to, as a teenager, to really find that right fit for you. When you're here, I'd like to think that any of us would be more than willing to talk to you about that and help you find the right group of friends to start hanging out with.
Yeah, and I'm going to interject on this one because I actually just had a conversation with somebody about this. I don't really necessarily know where the person asking this question is coming from, but I think adults do this too, but I think especially as teenagers, a lot of times we mistake fitting in or being liked with being the center of attention and being popular. And those two things are not the same. So if you feel like you have to have this group of people that, wants to just worship you, then that's not the same as fitting in. So don't get those two mixed up.
And I can also, from experience say that, I had a huge pool of friends when I was in high school. I was one of those very popular kids from all outward perspectives. I probably was the kid that you thought fit in really well, whoever asked this question. But still intrinsically, I never felt like I fit in. We all have insecurities. Even as adults, we have insecurities. They're there. They're always there. So, you know, I like I said, I probably looked like I fit in just fine and was really, really popular, but I still sometimes always, you know, had those moments where I felt like I was on the outside. People didn't really like me. I second-guessed what I said and what I did. It's part of growing up. It's part of going through these teenage years and figuring out who we are. I would be willing to bet everybody in this room has got some insecurities and at one time or another felt like they didn't fit in. And try to remember that. We all feel like that sometimes. I guarantee you everybody does.
Matt Korris doesn't like bacon on his cheeseburgers. Does God still love him?
Absolutely not. No, I'm sorry. No.
Then it's not a...
That's the other unforgivable sin. Matt will talk.
All right.
But Matt, we still love you.
We still love you.
We will have an intervention.
Yes.
It's a lot harder now, but we still do.
We care about your soul, and we will talk.
All right. What if you are a role model for someone, and you've made some bad decisions and still are, but don't want to give it up? Like, if you're a role model for someone, you've made some bad decisions, and you still are making bad decisions, but you don't want to give up being a role model. What do you...
Well, I'm going to be really blunt on this one. You're going to have to decide what kind of role model you want to be. Are you going to be a positive role model, or are you going to be a negative role model? When I was younger, again, I was a negative role model for a lot of people. As I grew up and kind of got my act together and started making smarter decisions, I would say now I'm a positive role model. You're always a role model for someone in your life. Decide what kind of role model you want to be. But you can't necessarily be a good role model if you're purposefully making poor decisions and you know you're making poor decisions, yet you continue to make them. So you've got to kind of make a decision in your life what kind of role model you're going to be.
Also, while you're analyzing all that, you might want to take a look at why you want to be a role model in the first place.
Yeah.
If you want to be a role model just for the sake of, feeling good about yourself and the power or whatever you're feeling of it, that's probably the wrong reason to be wanting to be the role model, and you might want to take a step back from that role at that point.
And again, making bad decisions does not make you a bad person. You can, like somebody said out there, make better decisions. You can turn your life around. You can, like Jen did, you can become a positive role model. You just need to change what you're doing. The fact that you know that you're making bad decisions shows, obviously, that you have some...
You know what the good decisions are.
Yeah, and I'm assuming you're feeling maybe a little bit of guilt. I don't want to assume, but maybe a little bit. But you also want to make sure that you're not being a hypocrite. You're not saying, oh, you need to do this and this and this, but you are doing the exact opposite. It's the whole do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Not going to work in this situation.
Yeah, you can be an awesome role model in showing somebody how you get past those bad decisions that you were making.
But you have to get past them.
So we're called to honor our mother and father, and I think this again goes back to one of the other questions. We're called to honor our mother and father. How can you honor your parents when they tell you things like, God doesn't love you?
Last week, Pastor Dave actually talked about this, so HEVOF kids, you've heard this. There's a difference between honoring your parents for who they are and obeying and believing the same way that they do. You need to honor your parents because they are your parents and they are in charge of you. Whether you like it or not, they are the boss of you at this point. But just if they are telling you that's something that is wrong, you don't have to believe that. You do have to respect them because they are adults, they are your parents, but you don't necessarily have to do what they're telling you to do if it is bad, or believe what they're telling you if it is wrong. Right, parents?
Yeah, I think the important thing to remember is that parents are human beings too. So maybe in frustration they say something or do something that you don't necessarily agree with. But we all do those kinds of things all the time. I mean, in any kind of relationship, especially family relationships and family dynamics, we have to remember that parents are human, students are human. We're going to do things that upset each other. We're going to do things that make each other angry, and that's why there needs to be communication. Your parents are doing something that upsets you, your parents are saying something that upsets you, good time to reflect and figure out what the situation is that prompted that, Every time somebody does something or says something to me that I find offensive or I get angry about, a good habit that I've gotten in over the years is to always look for the little bit of truth in that statement. Why did this person say this to me? Why did this person act this way towards me? Why did this person criticize me in that way? So that I can come away looking at it and saying, was I at fault in some way, shape, or form? In every human relationship, there's two sides to every story. So search, for what's really going on, but always remember that communication has to be key in every relationship. No parent is perfect, no student is perfect, and you're not going to be able to work through whatever issues obviously you're having with your parent that I'm getting from these questions if you don't come to the table and have respectful communication with each other. That will never happen if you don't have those respectful conversations.
Right, and a point that, just a disclaimer for what Alyssa said about, whether or not your parents are saying or doing good things, bad things, God-honoring commands to you. And if you're not sure if what they're saying is good, bad, correct, right, wrong, based on God, then go to the Word and go to, one of us or, your pastor and, talk with them about, is this right, what they said? It's never a bad thing to fact check before you retaliate.
Don't just assume it's wrong if you don't like it.
Yeah,
exactly.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we only have time for one more question. You guys like this format? Doing things this way? All right. Well, we got two more of them. So, I don't know. Is there some maybe other forum where we can post answers to these questions? Put them on the Facebook page maybe or something? Fuse website? All right. So I guess what I'm proposing, because there's a whole bunch we didn't get to, is we can just throw them up on the website and at least answer what's left from now. Again, we encourage you, if you have questions that we didn't get to, that can't wait, find a leader afterwards, ask your questions, and if we don't know the answer, we'll find somebody that does. We'll try and help you work through those things. There's no better way to grow closer to God than to ask these questions and wrestle through them with other believers. So I encourage you guys to to keep doing that. Last question: if people are better at everything than me, why should I live anymore, or why should I try?
Well, my first piece of advice is, are you looking at the things that you do well, or are you only looking at the things that you don't do well that other people can do better? Because a lot of times that negativity that starts creeping in on us is because we're constantly looking at the strengths of other people and what other people can do and what we can't do, and we're not looking at the strengths and the gifts that God has given us, that we have been called to ourselves. Each of us is different. Each of us has our own unique gifts, talents that God's blessed us with, and they're going to be different than other people's. So, it's a trap that I fell into for a long time too, and sometimes still do. This person's better at this than me. This person's better at that than me. Because it's human nature to always get caught up in what we can't do instead of looking at what we can do. So to whoever wrote this, here's the first thing I want you to do tonight when you go home. Here's what I want you to do before you go to bed. I want you to sit down and I want you to come up with a list of things that you can do and do well. And there are things that you can do and do well. And I want you to focus on those things instead of the things that you think other people are better at. Because it's really important when we start to feel this way that we start focusing on the blessings that we have in our lives. So go home tonight, each and every one of you, if you need to, and take a long, hard look at yourself and the things that you are good at. And I guarantee you're going to come up with some things that you're good at. Those are the blessings and the gifts God's given you. And those are the things that you need to focus on. Not the fact that so-and-so is a better athlete than me, or so-and-so sings better than me, or so-and-so is more popular than me. Go home and look at what God's blessed you with tonight.
That's really good. One of my pet peeves, and I see it a lot more online and on Facebook, not from necessarily anyone here specifically, but people and teenagers and even some adults they judge and identify and label themselves based on other people's views or reactions to them. And I see that a lot with Facebook in terms of, like my status if you've had a crush on me. Yeah. Message me if you have a crush on me now. Like all like, I don't understand why we need to build ourselves up based on how other people feel about us. When we talked earlier about how we are a holy people, and the term holy means we're separate, we're in this world, but we're not of it. God created you, and God says, before you were in the womb, I knew you, and I couldn't wait for you to be a part of my big plan on earth. And we should stop trying to, look at ourselves and identify who we are based on how other people see us or how good or bad we are at things with other people, when we already know, that Christ has overcome the world. We are not of this world. There is a bigger, grander scheme of things for us. And other people are human, and we are all, have sinful nature and are imperfect, and will never please everyone, because everyone has different views, and whether they're right, wrong, perfect, imperfect, just go to God and have Him judge who you are based on your heart. And remember, other people are going to see, like I talked about, they'll see the Paul in you. They'll see the flaws. They'll see what you're good at and what you're not good at and how you treat people. And God sees, the Saul, I love you, you're my child, and you're doing awesome things in my name, and that's all there is to it. So go to God when you have those concerns about whether you're good or bad at stuff.
I think God also has a tendency to reward hard work. So, I really wish that I was the world's greatest guitar player. But if I picked up a guitar, it would sound absolutely horrible, and you guys would all laugh at me. And if I threw that guitar down and said, God doesn't love me because He didn't make me the world's greatest guitar player, you guys would probably all laugh at me like he's never practiced a day in his life. Of course he's not good. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. So if that's, I think sometimes, it's just like, well, I just want to be good at something. But I know a lot of people that are really good at stuff, they put a lot of time and effort into being good at that. So, all right. All good questions. One of the other questions that we had was, is this the permanent text-in number? And the answer to that question is yes. I don't know as of right now if we can guarantee you how often we will check it, but I'm guessing what that means is if you guys want to save this number in your phone or something, you can do that. And something comes up while you're at school or at Fuse, even if it's instead of filling out the little cards, you can go ahead and text this number, and the next time we do a discussion or whatever, we will see your questions. So
don't text during class.
Yeah, that'd be really weird. Your teacher's like, who are you texting? I'm texting my church to get answers to this perplexing question I have.
Because I don't think what you're telling us is God honoring, so I'm going to check.
Text these people.
Oh, that would be awesome. Let's give a hand for these panel peeps. You guys did that was very insightful. One more thing, I don't know if your groups talked about this, but in basically just less than 2 weeks, we have the Fuse Night of Worship concert. It's going to be awesome. We have some phenomenal groups. I know last year this was pretty much one of our biggest fundraisers. Not to mention the fact it's just an awesome time to have everybody come together and just be able to celebrate the birth of Christ as Fuse and raise some money and just enjoy some awesome music and all of these phenomenal musical gifts that He has blessed everybody with. So not only should you guys be there, but this is the time when you should invite your aunts and uncles and cousins and grandmas and grandpas and teachers and anybody you know. Yeah.
Random people on the street.
You mentioned that it's a fundraiser. Do these guys have to pay?
No. It is a fundraiser, but for students, it is free. So your parents have to pay, but for students, free. So bring your friends. There would be nothing cooler than if this entire coffee house was just packed full of people. I think that would be totally awesome.
And the funds for these fundraisers, guys, goes to the events like Pause. It's coming up in the second semester here, so...
Man, is there going to be food at this thing?
Yeah, there's going to be food.
So come for that.
Prime rib, lobster.
All those animals we talked about earlier, they're all going to be
That
here,
is
right?
why we asked the question in the beginning. So there's going to be pheasant and cat and...
and dog.
You know us Lutherans, we put on a good potluck.
Marlon, please on my carpet one more time. There will be dog in this space.
All right.
I'm just kidding.
I think that's it. These guys are awesome. We're going to do this again, like I said, 2 more times. So save this number, ask your questions, everything else. And is Crave coming back up again? Yeah, all right. While they come back up again, if you guys would just get ready to worship and pray with me here.
Lord, we just want to thank you again so much for all of the just amazing things that you've blessed us with. We have so much to be thankful for as we get ready to start going through this season that we call Christmas, Lord. We just pray that you keep our eyes fixed on you and that you help us to go throughout the season just with that desire to have a better relationship with you, a desire to just walk closer with you and not to let all those other things be a distraction, Lord, but that we remain curious and that we just continue to want to know who you are as a person more. All these things we pray, Lord, in your name. Amen.